Hey guys, welcome back to Pepper Geek. Today is Halloween day, and we are going to be making spicy hot pepper lollipops. Homemade lollipops are incredibly easy to make, and this is a fun twist on it. It's a great way to use up some of your dehydrated hot pepper powder as well. All you need for ingredients is 1 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of corn syrup, a 1/4 cup of water, a 1/2 teaspoon of candy flavoring, which is optional, though I do recommend it because it really does add a good concentrated flavor to the candy. The candy flavoring is relatively inexpensive, a couple of bucks at a craft store. I'm using cotton candy flavor today, but you could make peach, strawberry, raspberry, or whatever flavor you want to use. And of course, your hot pepper powder. Today we're using a 1/4 teaspoon of 7-pot primo pepper and a 1/4 teaspoon of homemade cayenne pepper. We find that a 1/2 teaspoon of hot pepper powder is a really good place to start because it's not overwhelmingly spicy, but it's just enough to keep that pleasant tingle the whole entire time you're eating the candy. Of course, if you want to go a little bit spicier, you can use a Carolina Reaper powder if you want, or just use more of the powder of your choice. So for supplies, I do have a lollipop mold here, which is also completely optional. You could just drop the candy onto a parchment paper, and you won't get that perfect round shape, but it works just as well. And you don't even have to make these lollipops. You could just make hard candies and wrap them up. So this lollipop kit came with the sticks, the mold, and the ties as well, so you can package them up nice. You can get them at the craft store, or we actually got these online, and we'll leave a link below for you. You will also need to be using a candy thermometer. We are using a thermopan, but I would recommend using a candy thermometer. There's no getting around this. It is very important that you heat the mixture up to 300 degrees and not any more and not any less. These are great for making jam as well, so it's a great thing to have in the house anyways. So with that, let's get started with making the candies. So make sure your molds are all set up and ready to go because this whole procedure is pretty quick. As soon as the mixture reaches 300 degrees, you immediately want to take it off the stove. You do not want it cooking any more than that. So to make the candy, you're going to add your 1 cup of sugar, your 1/4 cup of corn syrup, and your 1/4 cup of water to a saucepan. We will be adding the candy flavoring as well as the hot pepper flakes after the mixture cooks. If you have a saucepan with a spout, I would recommend using it because it'll be a lot easier to pour the candies into the molds. After you add all of your ingredients, you want to make sure you give it a good stir so that everything is incorporated. After you've already mixed your ingredients together and incorporated them, you do not want to stir the mixture anymore. Place the mixture over medium-high heat, and it's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes for the mixture to come up to 300 degrees. This can happen pretty quickly, so you want to make sure you monitor very closely. A candy thermometer is best to use in this recipe because it just kind of sits in the pot and eventually comes up to temperature. You don't have to keep checking it. The hard crack stage is between 300 and 310 degrees. So if you take it off the stove at 300, the temperature will rise a few extra degrees, but as long as it doesn't get over 310, you should be okay. And definitely do not forget about the mixture on the stove. If this ends up overcooking and burning, you'll have a huge mess to deal with, and it will be impossible to clean. You'll notice the bubbles begin to boil and they'll get a little bit bigger. Make sure you're monitoring the temperature really close. As you can see, we are quickly approaching. The mixture is going to come right off the stove as soon as it hits 300 degrees. All right, so we reached 300 degrees. Immediately take it off the stove and add your pepper powder. Add your candy flavoring. And at this point, you're gonna mix really well. So this is incredibly hot, so you want to make sure you're being extra careful so you don't burn yourself. It's also important to move very quickly because the mixture hardens very fast. As you stir, you'll notice it becomes more translucent. At this point, you are ready to start pouring. So really carefully, I'm just gonna go one by one. And you want to make sure that the sticks are fully submerged as well. Alright, these pops are all poured and ready to go. Any leftover mixture you have, you can pour onto parchment paper and just make standalone candies instead of lollipops. So you want to make sure that you let these cool for at least an hour before you give them a try. If you're going to be packaging them, then make sure that they cool for longer so that the packaging doesn't stick to the candy. So we're gonna let these guys cool for an hour or so, and then we'll pop them out and give them a try. All right, so it's been about an hour, and these are all cool and ready to be popped out of the molds. So as you can see, they come out very easily. You can just pop them out, and yeah, they're ready to go. These guys have already been packaged, and you can see this one we didn't use a mold for, so it's a little bit funky looking. All right, so let's give them a try. Calvin? It's still a little warm. The cotton candy is kind of a subtle flavor, but it reminds me of candy corn, so we really wanted to make it for Halloween. So feel free to experiment with this recipe and get creative. Instead of using artificial flavoring, you could use grape juice and boil it down and add that to your mixture. You could use different flavor pepper powders or even add food coloring to make the colors pop. So these are candies. They do have a pretty long shelf life. I would probably consume them within 6 months of making them. The easiest way to clean your dishes and pots is to soak them overnight in water. So the water will dissolve the sugar, and it doesn't necessarily have to be hot water, but just give them a soak for several hours or overnight if you can, and in the morning it should be a lot easier to clean the hardened candy off of your dishes. So that's all there is to making homemade lollipops. We hope you enjoyed this recipe and that you have a happy Halloween. These are great for Halloween parties, probably not so much for the trick-or-treaters, but you can have fun with this recipe and get pretty creative. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Make sure that they cool longer so that it doesn't stick, I guess.